happening, folks? Got an intro. There you have it, folks. Here we are. It's Patriot Nation Radio Network, Constitution 101, with me, Mark Hoffman, your host, and our co-host, the Lady Federalist, Shar Signs. Shar, welcome to the show. What's happening? We had a little technical glitch there. I don't know what happened, but we're back. Here we are, Constitution 101.
Hey, Mark. I understand you're not feeling well. Bless your heart.
Yeah, you know, it happens to the best of us.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Well, folks, we got a great show on tap for you tonight. I'm going to let our co-host handle the duties this evening. As I am seriously under the weather, I'm sure you can all tell. I will be listening in while our favorite Federalist, the Lady Federalist, Shaw Signs, takes the reins tonight for Section 2. Powers granted to the executive branch, which is very important as we are in a heated presidential race right now. So sit back, enjoy this great tune. I'm going to turn it over to you, Shaw, right now. Knock 'em dead, and God bless, and I'll be listening in. If you need me, holla.
All right. Thank you so much. You rest well, and I will holler if I need you. Thank you so much. Folks, normally, thanks. Normally, folks, we would you would expect us to go straight into Article 1 of the Constitution since we did finish the Bill of Rights last Monday. But as Mark mentioned, because we are in the middle of a very heated presidential election, I felt like it was really important to start with Article 2 of the Constitution, which describes the executive branch. We may end up having to do another episode on it because there's going to be quite a bit of discussion with regard to it, but it is a rather short article. We're going to go ahead and just jump straight into it. Okay. Article 2, Section 1, the executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years and, together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. Before we go on to the third clause, I want to go ahead and just say, obviously, Clause 1 is relatively self-explanatory. Vice President, President, elected 4 terms, boom, it's done. Clause 2 is explaining how the Electoral College is established. And to boil it down, it's saying that the states select the members of the Electoral College. The number of members of the Electoral College per state is equal to the number of representatives and senators for that state. So obviously each state will have 2 senators. And then, of course, the number of representatives at the time that the Electoral College is convened. And it's based on any kind of election rules that that state itself determines, okay? And then it goes on further to say that federal representatives or senators cannot be on the Electoral College. So that's basically a nutshell what Clause 2 is all about. Now, Clause 3 has actually been superseded by the 12th Amendment. So rather than reading Clause 3 in the Constitution, which each one of you can do on your own copies of your Constitution, I will go ahead and read the 12th Amendment, okay, which is basically the same as what was originally there with some minor changes. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. In other words, they can't just pick people from their state, okay? They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president, and they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted for as president and of all persons voted for as vice president, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have such a majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. So in other words, if there's any kind of a tie, the House of Representatives comes in and breaks the tie, okay? But in choosing the president, the vote shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president, whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before the 4th day of March next following, then the vice president shall act as president, as in the case of the death or other constitutional disability of the president, and that's referring to Amendment 25. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have a majority, then from the 2 highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice, but no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of the vice president of the United States. Okay, so again, this is Amendment 12, which supersedes Clause 3, and it is a lawful constitutional superseding because it's an amendment, Clause 3 of Article 2, Section 1. Okay, we're going to skip over now to Clause 4. The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. Self-explanatory again. What day is election? The federal Congress determines that. All right, now we get to Clause 5, which is a clause of contention and may end up having to be a whole episode on the Lady Federalist. No person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. The portion of this that says or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution is what is referred to as the Grandfather Clause, referring to our founding fathers who fought in the Revolution. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States. Okay. This clause here, because of the residency requirements, the natural-born citizen, so on and so forth, this is why this is such an area of contention, why certain candidates whose names I won't mention right now are in such contention, simply because Congress is allowed to determine rules of naturalization, and those rules of naturalization are being used to determine these specific candidates' status as natural-born citizens. However, that's an apples and oranges kind of thing. Natural-born citizenship is based on a piece of work called Law of Nations by Amer de Vattel, and this book was used by our founding fathers as their go-to law book. This is referenced in a letter by Benjamin Franklin where he thanks, I can't remember Charles' last name now, but a Frenchman who sent 3 copies. Okay, so that definition is the definition for a natural-born citizen. Then we get to Clause 6, which was superseded by the 25th Amendment. It's discussing the removal of the president, so we will skip over to Amendment 25. Amendment 25 has multiple sections. It's somewhat long. Okay. Amendment 25, Section 1, in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. Section 2, whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. 3, whenever the president transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 4, whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for the purpose if not in session. If the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office. Okay, I know this sounds really, really, really confusing. All right, now, obviously, Section 1 is self-explanatory. Okay, President's removed from office or dies or resigns, Vice President takes over. Section 2, the office of Vice President becomes vacant. The President nominates a Vice President, and both houses of Congress have to come to a majority of vote to approve it. Okay, very similar to appointing a Supreme Court justice. Okay, now Section 3 is when the President, him or herself, sends a letter to the houses of Congress saying, I can no longer do this right now, whether it be temporary or permanent. I can't do this right now, at which time the Vice President steps in as acting President until such time as the President says, okay, everything's fine now, I'm better, I'm ready to take my duties back over, sends another letter, everything's all good. Section 4 is the confusing part because of all the legalese that's in there. Bottom line is, if the Vice President and all of the people mentioned therein decide that the President can no longer do his job, they transmit this letter, Vice President stands up as acting President. Either that same body of people or the President, him or herself, can later send a transmission to the persons mentioned in Section 4 saying, no, I really can do this. And then, of course, all of the requirements for verifying or denying said ability to carry out office have to be met. And then the president is either allowed to or disallowed from continuing to stay in the office of president. By all means, reread this amendment. It was ratified February 10th of 1967, so it is not nearly as difficult with the language to understand as the original portions of the Constitution. All right, now on to Clause 7, another one that's rather self-explanatory, but we'll discuss it a little bit. The president shall, at stated times, receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Bottom line, president gets paid. He's paid a set salary. It can neither go up nor down during his term, nor can he receive pay from any other state in the union in addition to what he's already receiving from D.C. That's pretty self-explanatory. The word emolument basically means pay, fee, or profit as part of an office. And then the last clause, Clause 8, is before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't say it has to be done on a Bible or any particular religious book or document. So it just says that he has to swear or affirm. And the reason why affirm is included there is because we did have founding fathers who were Quakers, and Quakers did not believe in making swears or oaths that were swearing, because it was essentially the same as making a promise that if you didn't keep would almost be equal to a sin, if I'm not completely mistaken on my understanding of that particular faith. So an affirmation was considered to be good enough. It's still a promise, but one that if you cannot keep it, you aren't going to be in, you're not going to have to worry about your eternal soul as a result of not keeping that oath or that swearing. By affirming that you do so, then you don't have to worry about your eternal soul. So that's basically what the difference is between the two there. So that is Section 1, okay, and that pretty much solves it. Section 1 just basically lays down the requirements for the president and how he gets there, okay, and what he has to do to get there. At least 35 years old, 14 years a resident, and a natural-born citizen. Section 2 discusses the duties and responsibilities of the president. And it looks like we have plenty of time to continue on here, so I think I'll go ahead and start into that. I really miss having Mark here because he and I have such a wonderful banter and tete-a-tete, but I want him to stay quiet and listening and to continue resting. So, Mark, don't you dare take that as a hint to come on the phone. With Section 2, the first clause, it says, the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any... I'm sorry, I just saw a message here from Mark. Let me see here again. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. And it looks like we might have someone calling in, but I don't have that kind of control. Let's see, Mark, do you think you can bring Tal on for me? Because I'll get him in.
Hey, Charlotte.
Hey, Tal, how you doing?
Good. How are you, sweetie?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for calling in. What you got for us?
Well, I was just listening in a little bit, and, you were talking about Section 1 of Article 2 there. And, the reports have come out recently concerning especially Clause 7. And we all know he's violated Clause 8. But
yeah.
the reports being about him trying to increase the salary of himself, that is, and future presidents upon his leaving office. I think it's a shame that he's done everything he can to willfully violate the Constitution, to infringe on our rights, and that's just the tip of the iceberg with these two right here. It can be said of the assassination of Mr. Lavoie, where the assassination order came from National Command Authority.
Correct.
That's levying war against citizens of the United States just by him doing that. Article 3, Section 3. So,
right.
I mean, it's a sad day we've seen with this person in office, and he's not even supposed to be there anyway, because he never got it right. He never got it right to begin with when everybody was watching him, and they said, oh, well, he did it in the background, behind closed doors, blah, blah, blah. No, that should be something that should be seen by everybody.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. If you're going to be running for, and I don't call it the highest office in the United States because it isn't. The executive branch is second to the legislative branch. Otherwise, it would have been listed as Article 1. So it is secondary to the legislative branch. But if you are going to be running as the executive of the United States, the face for the United States, then you most certainly need to be transparent. And we all have learned in the last 7+ years that everything that comes out of that particular administration is doublespeak. Transparency means opaque. Fundamental transformation means things are going to become topsy-turvy world. Yeah.
His idea of transparency is lie and let it be known he's lying and dare you to do something. That's what his idea of transparency is.
You got that right.
I mean, it's not like we can't see the lies. It's not like we can't see what he's lying to us. He's just basically daring us. What are you going to do about it? And everybody's been apathetic, sitting on their hands doing nothing. And it seems to me that Americans are like that. I did a video the other day. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's sad that we've got 7% of Americans are just too scared to stand up and say something for fear of retribution. But they can't punish us at all if we stand together.
That's right. That's right. And Lavoie's daughter's sang that beautiful song, Will You Stand? Because it's true, we either stand together or we hang separately. And we do need to stand together. And standing together doesn't necessarily mean doing what our brave political patriots have done. And going out and standing and literally risking life and fortune and ending up unlawfully and wrongfully prisoned. Standing can mean doing what you do on 10 Million Man March to D.C. with your radio show, what I do, what Mark does, what I do with my political protests and my speaking and my teaching and my writing. Excuse me. Today I had the pleasure of meeting Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. I'm a Texan. And he was in Abilene at a bookstore doing a book signing. So myself, my boyfriend, my best friend and chauffeur, Cynthia Prim, who's probably listening in, she drove us over there, and her sister-in-law, Antoinette. We all arrived in our Liberty Tree T-shirts. We presented him with his own Liberty Tree T-shirt, as well as a copy of Lavoie's book that was signed by Shalise Finicum Finch, one that had been signed for me. And I thought, well, heck, I know her. I can get another one anytime, So, and so we presented that to him. And, of course, we bought his books and got them signed as well. But I was so impressed that he actually took the time to look at what our shirts were, was impressed by them, thanked us for our patriotism for standing up with him. And, of course, we thanked him for his strong stance against not just the BLM, but for all federal tyranny into the state of Texas. And, of course, being that it was a book signing and the line was wrapped around the store, we certainly didn't want to be greedy with the time. So we moved on. We will continue to speak with him through letters and emails and such to encourage him to reach out to other governors to protect the patriots who were at Bunkerville who are Texans, because I know of a handful of them that are Texans that were at Bunkerville that are in hiding because of what happened to the Bunkerville Patriots in other states. And so I want to make sure, I want to hear it from him or his representative and, his left-hand man or whatever in a letter in response. This is what we will do to protect our Texas Patriots, to make sure that the feds don't scoop them up and drag them off to federal detention. But be that as it may, whatever you may think about a politician, from the politician point of view, at least he seems sincere, and at least he seems to be trying. So you have to give them kudos for that. And then
I
go ahead.
more governors like him. I wish we had more governors like him, because he took a stand and said, "Get out of here, government." So
yes.
I definitely admire him. And I would love to have him on my show sometime. I've been trying to get a hold of him. I understand he's busy.
Oh, yeah. He's busy running the second largest state in the U.S. land-wise, probably the most hated state as far as D.C. is concerned. Yeah, he's just got a couple, 2 or 3 things going on.
Yeah. But
and
definitely, I'd love to have a couple hours of his time, though. Oh, my goodness. If I could sit down and talk to him for a couple hours, that'd be awesome.
Oh, heck, I would be happy with just 15 minutes. But now Wednesday, for all of our Texans that are listening in, Wednesday in San Angelo, out front of the San Angelo Independent School District, there is a protest against the Departments of Justice and Education joint Dear Colleague letter regarding transgender students under the Title IX legislation. It appears that particular superintendent will be following that guidance. And so Mrs. Shannon Carpenter and Mrs. Valerie Villa, I can never pronounce her name, Villarreal, of Lone Star Liberty, have been so sweet to invite me to come down there and speak and stand with them in protest. And we're going to try to make this superintendent understand that we're not going to have this in our schools. What Target, what Starbucks, what other private companies and private businesses choose to do with regard to transgender, that's their business. We, the people, will vote with our dollars. What President Obama is doing outside of his Section 2 powers and responsibilities by trying to create legislation through policy letter is not going to be stood for.
Right. And especially when he's violating the 9th and 10th Amendments to the Constitution as well.
Absolutely.
Not only that, but also trying to force the Muslims here, the refugees, as he calls them, even though ISIS has not only promised to infiltrate, they've shown that they can successfully do so. And we're looking at Venezuela, they're in chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at Sweden, Germany, France, Belgium, all those European countries are now being attacked by the people that they call refugees and welcomed in. And
right.
He's trying to force it on us too, and it's a sad thing. It burns me up.
You're not alone
really
in that.
He would place us in danger like that. And then at the same time, he's trying to take away our weapons to defend ourselves at the very same time. I mean,
right.
that's still levying war against the United States right there by doing just that.
Yes,
so,
he has committed treason on a number of occasions. I'd have to cast through my mental Rolodex to get down to the nuts and bolts, and
yeah.
you know. But
the number
but
of
he
times
has.
I have to go through my Rolodex with the number of times he's committed treason.
Correct. But by violating the 9th and 10th Amendment, as well as Article 4 of the Constitution, which is essentially, or more commonly known as the states' rights article, he is violating states' rights by sending this mandate down and then turning the carrot stick into all stick, as was said by the Oklahoma Attorney General in his letter that he wrote in response to the Dear Colleague letter. It's just not going to stand, and it should not stand, and we certainly shouldn't force our children to endure something of this nature while it goes through judiciary litigation for the next 3 to 7 years as it goes up through the various circuit courts on its way to the Supreme Court. Besides which, the Supreme Court simply issues opinions, so whether it issues an opinion one way or the other isn't going to validate or invalidate the law. The opinion of the Supreme Court should be quite simple. Mr. President, you have overstepped your constitutional bounds. This letter is invalid.
Yep. I'm going to shut up, but I do want to say that Daryl Thorne, one of the protesters from the Malia Refuge, he's going to be on our show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. So to all your listeners tonight, if y'all want to tune in to hear what he might have to say about everything that's going on.
Absolutely. Send me information to my page, The Lady Federalist. I'll be sure to share that information out. I would definitely post it to my regular timeline because we are Facebook friends. If you create events like Mark and I do, share the event. I'll add it to my events page. We definitely need to get it out. Daryl will also be on my show in a couple of weeks as well. So we're getting him out there. We definitely need to get that out there. So Daryl Thorne tomorrow night on the 10 Million Man March to D.C. show on, you're still on with World Integrity?
At the moment, yes. We're getting ready to go out and branch out onto our network here soon. But it'll be on 5 p.m. Eastern, folks. Be looking for the links. So, there was something else I was going to say. That's all right. I'll mute myself. But if I have anything, I'll come back. That way, Mark doesn't have to mute me, and I can come back in whenever I need to. I promise I won't interrupt.
There you go. That works. Thanks so much for calling in. It's been a long time since we spoke, and I really appreciate it.
Most definitely. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. I'm going to mute myself.
All right. Thanks. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that was Tal Pollard of the 10 Million Man March to D.C. radio show, currently on World Integrity News Network. As he said, he and his co-hosts will be soon branching out on their own, and when he lets me know who, where, when, and all the details, I will be sure to share that with you. We here at Patriot Nation Radio, we're not greedy. We don't care where you are. If you're constitutional, liberty-minded, we will plug your show. Alrighty, so that's 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on World Integrity News Network. Go ahead and check it out. So, again, we were talking about Clause 1, Section 2 of the President's roles, duties, responsibilities, okay? Essentially, Section 1 says what his job is, what he can do. He's Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Services and the state's militias, but only when the state's militias are called into service for the U.S., okay? He, of course, can require opinion in writing of the various executive departments, okay, obviously within the subject for their responsibilities and roles. And he has the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in the cases of impeachment. In other words, any kind of a federal convict, for lack of a better term, he can reprieve them, not state level, but federal level. He can grant reprieves unless you are a previously impeached officer of the United States. It doesn't have to be president. Any member of the federal government can be impeached. Now, before I move on, I want to mention a few things here. And if she's listening, please don't take this personally. I had a little Facebook discussion with someone on another chat, but she's not the only person who has mentioned this. There is a certain political candidate out there whose name I'm not going to mention that a lot of people are saying will be the solution and salvation for our Patriot political prisoners if and when he's elected as president. You guys probably already know who I'm speaking about, so I don't need to say his name. Herein lies the problem. The guys are currently imprisoned pending trial. They haven't even been convicted. So based on simply Clause 1 of Section 2, the only role that the president has with federal legal matters is granting pardons of those who are already convicted. So short of finding constitutional workarounds, as we have seen with not just President Obama, but many presidents prior to him, the next president cannot do a thing with regard to releasing our political prisoners until they are actually convicted, which none of us want. Can he or she speak to members of the Department of Justice and request that bail be set for these people or that they be released on their own recognizance pending trial? Of course, anyone can ask that. But is that within the office of president's specified duties? No. The only duty with regard to judicial matters for the president is the granting of pardons and reprieves for convicts. So while I applaud the enthusiasm for this particular candidate, and I certainly applaud the rumors that this candidate is supporting, and I say rumors because I have yet to myself lay any eyes on actual documentation from that particular campaign that they are supporting these political prisoners. All right, but while I applaud all of this effort, those of us who are constitutionally minded need to keep our minds and our hearts pure with this regard. It's the same thing as putting forth an constitutionally ineligible candidate. It's the same thing here. We don't want to repeat what the, quote, other side has done just because the other side has done it. This is not Machiavelli's The Prince, whereby the ends justify the means, because wrong is wrong and right is right. So using a wrong way to get to the right ends is not the way to go about things. And I know that every one of you with a conscience and morals understands what I'm saying. This is not simply my opinion. It's just basic universal understanding of morality. We either do it right or we don't do it at all. Mark, I know you're listening. Do we have any other callers holding that might want to speak, or is it time for me to move on to the next one? You can just give me a thumbs up or a no. Okay. It's time to move on to Clause 2 of Section 2. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. Okay, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the court of law, or in the heads of departments. Okay, here's one that is a stickler with me. Let's talk about the treaty part, okay? By and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties. Very recently, we had a lot of hot and heavy negotiations with Iran. All of D.C. kept calling it a deal. They never would call it a treaty. As Shakespeare would say, what's in a name? A rose by any other name still smells as sweet. Okay? I don't care what they called the Iran deal. They could call it a deal. They could call it a negotiation. They could call it a contract. It was still a treaty. However, those sneaky snakes in D.C. decided that because it was called a deal and not a treaty, it wasn't a treaty, and therefore they decided that Senator Corker of Tennessee put forth a bill that 98 yeas, 1 nay, Tom Cotton of Arkansas, and 1 abstain, which was, of course, Mitch McConnell, to completely and totally flip how treaties are ratified. Instead of a 2/3 majority yes, it became a 2/3 majority no. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard me correct. Rather than using the constitutional amendment process to change how treaties are to be handled, Congress enacted a bill in order to get the Iran deal, treaty, contract, piece of paper, whatever, passed. And we all know that it was a piece of garbage. Okay? Also recently, one of the Supreme Court justices, Justice Scalia, passed away. One of the, in my opinion, one of the better justices that we've had in a long time. He was a constitutional originalist, so he was a man after my own heart. There's been lots of Congress critters up in arms over this, saying we're going to block any nomination by Obama, blah, blah, blah. That's not their job. Their job is to advise and consent on the nomination. The president can nominate. It says so right here in black and white. He may nominate to make these appointments. Okay? It is Congress' job to vet and vote. So they can decide to vote against the nomination. They can choose to investigate all the way down to their kindergarten school records to find whatever they want to say that this person is unfit, but they are not allowed to block a nomination. Are we starting to catch on to exactly how disgusting D.C. really is? And it's not just for Supreme Court justices. It's also for ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, okay, and the other offices of the United States, in other words, the cabinet offices, okay, unless it's otherwise provided for. And when it says herein otherwise provided for, it's referring to the Constitution itself, okay, or specifically Article 2. And then it says further, Congress may by law vest the appointment of inferior officers, and anything below those cabinet heads, below the Supreme Court justices, below the ambassadors, that kind of thing, to either allowing the president alone to make those appointments, to the courts of law making those appointments, or to the heads of the departments themselves making those appointments, or in any mismatch or just discretion as they see fit. So that's where we get a lot of that crazy law going on. And then the last most important portion here, which is probably why Congress doesn't tick off the president too terribly much, is the president shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. So it's probably why the senators don't tick off the president too terribly much and play the go along to get along game. Because when the Senate is in recess, technically speaking here, the president might decide to go ahead and fill it up with 100 of his or her favorite folks. And then what do we do? I know technically it really wouldn't work that way, but in essence what it's saying. Section 3, he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. Okay. Notice it says recommend. This is where, when we're considering a presidential candidate, we need to be very careful about what they say on the campaign trail. When I become president, I'm going to fill in the blank. No, when I become president, I'm going to recommend blank is what they really should be saying. Because unless it's up in Section 1 or Section 2, there isn't squat diddly that the president can do. He cannot write law. He cannot. I don't care what executive orders they put out. I don't care about this, as Tal and I were discussing earlier, the transgender bathroom Title IX policy letter that came out jointly from the Departments of Justice and Education. We all know that it came from President Obama, but it came to those two departments trying to twist Title IX, which has traditionally and always prior to this letter been with regard to gender equality in schools. But you cannot make law from the office of the president. It's not here. Okay? He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. Okay? The going over to the separate houses and trying to, referee them, basically. The adjournment portion, I'm going to be honest with you there, I don't understand it. I'd have to dig more into it to really and truly understand it. And then, of course, receiving ambassadors and other public ministers, okay? It's like I said to Tal earlier, the face of the United States. He's not the head of the United States. He's not the highest public office of the United States. The executive office is the face of the United States. He's the one who visits other countries. He's the one who entertains visitors from other countries. Okay? And then Section 4, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. The high crimes and misdemeanors part is my favorite, because I'm sure that all of us could make a list that would wrap the globe multiple times of high crimes and misdemeanors committed by just this one president alone. That's not to say that previous presidents have not also committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Bribery, that's a really hard one to prove. Treason, yeah. I would say that President Obama, for certain, has committed treason, if for no other reason with regard to Benghazi, by his simply ignoring it, not providing the required and necessary backup that was requested by Ambassador Stevens, and not just on the day that it occurred, wherein right there in Italy they could have gotten help, and maybe not exactly on time, but within enough time to perhaps save their lives. But no, he just lets his then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, run the show, make up lies, lie to the survivors, and go on about business as if nothing has occurred. There's a problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, when the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Services ignores the pleas, members of the ambassadorial service, and tells members of the armed services to stand down. Whether he said it himself or not, that order was given, and as Commander-in-Chief, the buck stops with him. He could very easily have made a phone call to the Pentagon and said, rescind that stand-down order. But he didn't. And 4 men died, and Hillary lied. and so did he. That there in of itself should be enough to put a chill in your heart and cause your blood to freeze. So we're looking at under 10 minutes here. I'm going to let Mark take over the board and go ahead and play all the commercials and songs that he has. Since we missed them at the beginning, I think I may have messed up some things in our blog talk we share together. I'm going to have to go mess. That was my intro music, by the way. I'm going to go in there and mess with some settings and make sure it doesn't play for anybody else again. But I'm going to let Mark go ahead and come on and play the music that he enjoys playing for all of us during these Constitution 101 classes. That does actually complete Article 2. If you guys have any questions with regard to what we have discussed tonight, with regard to anything we've discussed previously, anything you would like to have discussed on upcoming episodes, please reach out to me at theladyfederalist@gmail.com. You can also reach me on Twitter at ladyfederalist, or you can find me on Facebook at my page, The Lady Federalist, and there's a messaging option there as well. I'm almost always glued to my computer, and when I'm not, I'm generally sleeping or at an event where I'm rallying. If I don't get back to you immediately, I'm probably asleep. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Mark, thank you so much for letting me take over tonight.
No problem. It was great. I was there listening. Very educating. Tal, again, he's there listening. Tal, thanks for calling in. Make sure you check out his show. He's over at the World Integrity News Network. Pal Bobby B. Singer's crew. Head on over there, www.blogtalkradio.com/WINN. Check that out tomorrow. Is at 5 p.m.
Eastern, yes.
5 p.m.
One more
Eastern,
thing,
folks.
One more thing, Mark, before I let you take over. For those of you who wish to support the families of our Patriot political prisoners, please go to TrueTexasPatriotGear.com and check out the handful of items that we currently have available either in stock or for your pre-order. Clothing items can be turned around lickety-split and out the door and on the way to you in no time flat. 100% of the proceeds are evenly divided amongst these families, and so many of these families are having to move in with relatives, give up things, sell homes, sell cars, sell property, and it simply is not fair. Darrell Thorne himself has had to start over from scratch. They're losing everything. They literally have put their fortunes on the line, as our founders did. So, again, that's TrueTexasPatriotGear.com. Thank you.
All right. And don't forget to catch the Lady Federalist on our own show, Friday nights right here on the Patriot Nation Radio Network. Why don't you give your information out for your show Friday and how people can reach out to you as far as maybe just catching you on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Well, we've got the Facebook. We have my Twitter account. We have my Instagram. And coming up this week, let me find my notes. Goodness gracious. I tell you what, turn the page and you lose everything. Okay. Coming up this week, I'm going to have, on the 27th, this Friday night, I'm going to have Jake Drake, who is Micah McGuire's father. He's going to be on the first hour. And then after that, it will be Mr. Darrell Thorne on as well. And so if you cannot be able to listen to him tomorrow night, you will be able to listen to him with me on Friday, and my show runs from 8 to 10 Eastern, meaning 7 to 9 Central, 6 to 8 Mountain, and 5 to 7 Pacific. And that's also here on Patriot Nation Radio.
Excellent. And then me this Thursday have, I don't know if anybody has seen, but Flint, Michigan's in a water crisis, and they're still in turmoil over there. They got stuff growing on their faucets and this lead in their water. The kids are getting sick. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I have Mike Kay and Heather Lucas of the Ohio to Michigan Water Drop Part 2 in the first half of the show. And in the second half of the show, I'll be bringing on Roy Backpack Barron, running as independent candidate for the United States of American president. He's a candidate that's doing some great things. He's a great patriot, loves our country, and his heart is in the right place. You don't want to miss this episode. This guy's great. Roy Backpack Barron, Mike Kay, and Heather Lucas of the Ohio to Michigan Water Drop. And that comes on right after James Bostic's show, A Conservative's Perspective. That starts at 7 p.m. this Thursday. www.blogtalkradio.com/Patriot Nation. The Patriot Nation Radio Network on Blog Talk Radio. And with that, I want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Shaw, for doing such a great job in covering my butt as I'm deathly ill. I'm able to pull it off pretty good sometimes. I think I sound all right. I almost got a Wolfman Jack sound going on here. But
who can tell when a New Yorker's ill? You guys always sound nasal. I'm just teasing you. I love you, brother.
Bada bing. Yeah, well, you better watch out. We'll get you some cement shoes there and drop you in the river.
You know I love you, brother. You know I love you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Shaw was talking about the Liberty Tees and the Finicums. We're going to play the Ballad of LaVoy Finicum here. This is Jordan Page. Head on over to www.jordanpagemusic.com. Get his album Liberty, and you'll be able to find a version of this. This is the very first recording he did. This is the recording audio he did the next day after LaVoy was shot. He was up all night writing. And this is Jordan Page, the Ballad of LaVoy Finicum. If I can get it to play. Yeah, and I had the pleasure of meeting meeting Jordan Page at an event here, right in my hometown. I was kind of shocked. A friend of mine, Alex. Yeah, a friend of mine, Alex, is big in the Libertarian Party here in our area, and he and Jordan are friends apparently, and
awesome.
So he brought Jordan to his backyard. He had a political gathering for the Libertarian Party of Florida, and Jordan Page played a show. And at 8 o'clock that night, he played the Ballad of LaVoy Finicum live on Patriot Nation Radio. But here you go. This is the Ballad of LaVoy Finicum, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thanks for tuning in. Until we meet again, good night, and God bless America. I can't get this darn song to play. What the heck's going on, folks? Tell me I need Adobe Flash Player.
Oh, gracious.
This is insane.
If it's not one thing, it's another.
Yeah, but I'm a blabbermouth, so I can keep it rolling. You always got to keep talking and try not to have dead air. That's my goal here,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And I try to refresh the page here and try it again, ladies and gentlemen. Try it again. And, of course, we're thinking about firing off a morning show with our producer, Lisa, and our friend who does some advertising for us from time to time, Mel. They're looking to do a show on their own on Wednesday mornings. I think Patriot Nation Radio Network in the morning is a great idea.
Yes.
And, all right, I can't get the song to play, so we're just going to wrap it up here, folks. And if you want a copy of your own version of the Ballad of LaVoy Finicum, head over to jordanpagemusic.com and you can get a copy of it right there. And make sure to get his merchandise and see where he's playing. He might be playing right near you. He's always on tour. He's always doing stuff. He's a hard-working man.
Yes,
and
he
with that,
is.
folks, I want to say good night and God bless America. Again, thanks, Shaw, for helping us out tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. It was wholly my pleasure, but don't you get sick again. I can't handle this all by myself stuff.
You did great. It was awesome. Good night and God bless.
Thank you. Good night. Take care, brother.